Hi there. Look at us. Bang on 7 o'clock in state-controlled Britain. Two-tier system we run here for justice at the moment. But anyway, enough of that. We've got the wonderful UK's, no, let's not say that. Let's say the world's top nutritionist in the room with us. So we're very lucky to have the Keto Pro, Richard Smith. Hi, Richard.
Stephen, how are we?
I'm very good. I learned a lesson in the week, not to talk about studies from memory, to always look them up, because sometimes you can confuse palm oil with coconut oil. You've seen the study a long time ago. But anyway, so if I do try to refer to a study, I'll try and look it up if we need one tonight. Anyway, right. Someone has taken advantage of the super sticker, which is MJ there. Thank you very much. And that means that if you've got a question, which you put QQ in front of, that question will pop up first. So, and also the super chats help the channel. So here's the question from MJ. Currently on a bulk, 196 pound male, eating 3.5 pounds of beef a day, a few eggs and butter, which is around 350 grams of protein. Too much for long term is the question. Keto Pro electrolytes and Sit Malate 2 left a good review on Amazon for you, Rich.
Awesome. And thank you. Very much appreciated. Yeah, we did a good job at that, by the way, on negating those negative reviews. So thank you for everyone who has left a positive review. Massively appreciated. Anyone who has done so, you will have an additional tub of electrodes winging its way over to you as a thank you from me. Okay, let's have a look at this. 196 pound, 3.5 k of beef. So you can see there's never any prep involved with this, is there? That's lives for you. This is lives. So 3.5 pounds. So 453 grams of protein. I'm wondering whether 350 of the protein is coming from the 3.5 pounds of beef. Oh, wait a minute. 3.5. Let's put that in. Right. Okay. That makes sense. So the 3.5, I'll talk you through as I do this, equates to 1,587 grams in weight. And as a rough figure, we divide this by 4.5 to give us, and as he's rightly put in, 350. I've got 352.6. Perfect. That is a lot of protein. It's not to say that we can't consume the additional protein, but is it conferring a benefit beyond a certain point? I think it becomes a case of diminishing returns. So the figure that Stephen and I quite often use is 1 gram per pound of body weight as a ballpark figure. We need a minimum of 0.5 grams per pound of body weight to allow us to heal and repair and not lose anything. But in order for us to grow, that figure needs to be 0.82 grams per pound. This is why we use the number of 1 gram per pound, because it's okay to go over on the protein. Now, this is for a normal person who does a little bit of training, likes to keep fit, but it's very different when it comes to extreme sports like bodybuilding, which I'm guessing MJ is doing, as he says he's currently on a bulk. So if we increase this to around 1.5 grams per pound, so let's see what this is. So the 196 multiplied by 1.5 gives us 294. So around 300 grams of protein is going to be sufficient. Extra 50, is it going to cause any harm? Probably not. Gluconeogenesis is demand driven, although we can initiate a little bit of fat storage, if you like, if we go beyond this because of the increase in insulin, which is elicited by leucine, by the way. I don't think that's going to be detrimental. And this is how we bulk when we do live a carnivore lifestyle, by the way. We do need to add additional nutrients in, whether this be fat or protein, fat being the main lever to pull with this. So while consuming that volume of protein, we are consuming enough of the fat. So eating 3.5 beef, a few eggs and butter, 350 grams of protein. Look, I've dabbled with this amount for a long time, on and off. I don't think we need it. I mean, we've just established that the minimum amount is going to be around 300, so it's probably slightly over. I wouldn't do it long term. but it's okay for a bulk. So if we're looking to target muscle growth, that is exactly what we need to target, is growing the muscle. And we quite often get confused with adding weight comparative to building lean mass. Now, there's a saying within the bodybuilding community that, you know, if it's not nailed down, eat it. And this is the mentality from the carb sort of bodybuilding society or bodybuilding establishment in regards to how we bulk. But we can dirty bulk. So we can add fat, which adds weight, but it's the muscle that we need to gain. So we need to be careful that we don't add in additional or excess body fat, because we only have to lose this when it comes to either just looking good or competing, for example. So I'm always very careful in not storing too much body fat in this process. This is why I keep everything driven primarily by the protein, and I do keep it to that 1.5, which for you, MJ, would be around about 300. Meal timings are incredibly important. And what we need to do is we need to ride something called the mTOR reset, because it's mTOR that allows us to build muscle. mTOR is anabolic and ketosis is catabolic. That doesn't mean that we need to be in a catabolic state continuously, and it doesn't mean that we need to be in an anabolic state continuously. AMPK, or fasting, autophagy, and mTOR, they are two systems that work against each other in like a seesaw effect, if you like. So when mTOR is activated, AMPK is suppressed, and so on and so forth. Even though they work against each other, they're both constantly activated. To a degree, it's just one predominates. But in the growing phase, we need to activate mTOR. We can do this via carbohydrate, via training, or via protein. Now, to do it via carbohydrate, we'll elicit the mTOR response via IGF-1, which gives a long, sustained activation of mTOR, which we don't want. Yes, mTOR is beneficial for building muscle, but overactivation via IGF-1 can lead to a whole host of problems. And this is why the average lifespan of the American bodybuilder is around 15 years lower than the average American. Many put it down to anabolic steroids. I would put it down to the overconsumption of carbohydrate and the over activation of mTOR via IGF-1, because the typical bodybuilder is in this constant mTOR state. They never lower this and allow their bodies to activate fasting and autophagy and AMPK, which is also incredibly important to homeostasis within the body. So the way that I would do this is I would train fasted in the morning, maybe 7, 8 a.m. for an hour, no longer than an hour, because we don't want to overexpress cortisol and damage the HPA axis. Now, this is one mTOR activation. You can eat, but you're wasting an mTOR activation if you eat straight after training, and you're prolonging that period in which you're going to benefit from the mTOR reset. So in a perfect scenario for me, I would train fasted for an hour, then I would wait 4 hours, then I would eat meal 1, which is going to activate mTOR. Then I would wait 4 hours, meal 2, 4 hours, and meal 3. So 3 meals throughout the day. This will give us 4 mTOR activations, because 1 is coming via the training itself. This, if we were to put this into an actionable state, we would train at, say, 8. And then we would train at 7. So we're done by 8. Eat at 12, eat at 4, eat at 8. So then we're having a good 11 to 12 hours before we're training, but a good 15 to 16 hours before we are eating. So we're benefiting from a balance of mTOR and AMPK. If you can do that, MJ, this is where you're going to benefit in the activation of the mTOR reset. We can't snack in between, because this is going to bump mTOR again. So it's important to eat the meal in a large amount. Remember, we are feast and fast animals. We're not grazers. So we eat a big bolus of protein. We need to elicit that leucine response, or that mTOR response via leucine. And this is around 3,000 milligrams of leucine. We can activate from as little as 1,500 or 1.5 grams. But 3 is going to be the maximum. And again, if we consume more than this, it doesn't mean that it's damaging. It just means it's a case of diminishing returns. And maybe we do not need to consume that additional amount. So if we do that, train in the morning, eat the meals 4 hours apart, we activate mTOR, we benefit from the mTOR reset, which is more powerful, and this will allow us to heal, build, and repair. Citrulline malate, fantastic. That's a potent vasodilator, which is going to help with training, repair, and recovery. We can also supplement with creatine monohydrate. my recommendation is around 10 to 15 grams of that per day, split pre and post. So anytime before training, anytime after. This will supply additional energy to the PC system, the phosphocreatine energy system, which is where our explosive movements come from. We don't need to activate the glycolytic energy system. And when we do, we can do it via the carbohydrate that we make naturally. On top of this, it will add water to the muscle. Excuse me. The water will give leverage, which means that you'll be able to lift more weight. All of this will allow more damage and more healing and repairing. And I would also supplement with a small amount of leucine prior to meals, maybe 5 minutes before. This just sort of readies the troops and gets them ready in preparation to utilize all the amino acids from the animal proteins that you're consuming in order to heal and repair. And the animal proteins are more bioavailable than plants, by the way. Not all proteins created equal. Try to consume your protein without any carbohydrate, particularly that's going to contain lectins and phytic acid, because this is going to block the absorption of many of the compounds in there, in particular things like zinc, iron, magnesium, B3, B6, B12. We don't want to block these. For example, if we block zinc is essential for the production of testosterone, and without this, it damages our body to heal and repair. So eat the protein with the fat, because the co-ingestion of protein with fat does increase muscle protein synthesis over a lean protein by itself. So always eat your proteins with your fats when bulking. Hope that helps.
Yeah, well, that's definitely got the money's worth for that super sticker of £2.99, or I think it's $2.99 in dollars. Just to say this live for people in the chat, this also runs to the X platform, and it also goes to Facebook. So there's lots of lovely comments in the chat, but we can't banter with you all the time because we're trying to sort of run this thing. Right, so that's great. Thanks very much. Norman Chester is saying, is American peanut butter full of seed oils? Does it cause arthritis? Does it contribute to arthritis? I'm assuming you're talking about the seed oils. Not sure if you're talking about the peanuts as well. Because I have a lot of American clients. Richard, do you have a lot of American clients?
Yes. Did you know my American following is solid. So thank you. Massively appreciated.
Yeah. So I think Trader Joe's does one, which seems to come up quite a bit. And Crazy Richards. I think they're not in England. Smuckers and 365 Everyday Value has peanut butter without any seed oils. Right. Now, does it cause arthritis? Well, we can't say cause because there's no randomized clinical trials with people locked in labs and all that stuff. Is there associations? Yes, because there's people that have arthritic pain, and when they take the seed oils out and nothing else, the arthritic pain goes down. Now, it could be coincidence, but there's ever such a lot of people that have that coincidence. So I can't say it causes arthritis. Does it contribute to arthritis? Yeah, well, I think that I can say yes, because when people go back on it, they have, whatever it is, maybe the peanut butter, let's say. Now, if it was, let's say they only introduced peanut butter with seed oils in, and the arthritis got worse, could it be the peanuts? See, could it be the salt? Could it be the other ingredients? So if they take that out and then the inflammation goes, and then they put some other seed oil based thing in, or just basically cooking vegetable oil or something like that, and the pain comes back, you're pretty nailed on with your N=1 that seed oils are causing a problem. I know Richard has some strong views on this as well, but that's my 2 penneth, as he says.
Yep, spot on. And always remember that the seed oils are highly inflammatory. So if you do suffer with any condition, that additional inflammation is going to cause issues. The peanuts, they're very high in lectins, which we know cause intestinal permeability. Intestinal permeability is what leads to autoimmune issues such as arthritis. So it's the peanuts, we can say, I guess, via intestinal permeability, the lectins, which will bind to the enterocytes on the epithelial cells lining the gut, cause the release of a molecule called zonulin. When zonulin is released, it'll cause a gap to appear in the tight junctions. This will allow undigested proteins to travel into the bloodstream where they shouldn't be. This is leaky gut, and this is what leads to autoimmune issues. Many things can cause this, things like alcohol, medications. Wheat germ agglutinin is incredibly prevalent at doing so. but also other lectins like phytohemagglutinin and so on, found in many other things. Casein also another contributor. So the lectins in the peanut butter, the peanuts themselves, I would say, there is evidence to suggest that is possible. We know that arthritis is, at least some arthritis is autoimmune. Leaky gut causes autoimmune, so I think it's safe to say that the peanuts are going to contribute to that. But then the seed oils are certainly going to increase the inflammation in the body, and it's going to cause and add to that pain. So I used to consume lots of peanut butter because I love the stuff. It's highly addictive. I used to convince myself that it was good for me. I did find a good quality one. I used to eat it most days. I convinced myself it was a good source of protein. But what we tend to forget with this, coming back to the comment that we just made on the bodybuilding side, is that the peanuts themselves are very high in phytic acid and lectins, two compounds which block the absorption of many of the amino acids and other compounds in there that we need to heal and repair. So it isn't this fantastic, delicious thing that we can put in that will allow us to heal, build, and repair and thrive. It's one of those things we can get away with if the rest of the diet is good. But if it does contribute to problems, then take it out. I removed peanut butter a very, very long time ago, and it was one of the best things that I ever did. There are other nut butters which may be more beneficial. Macadamia nut butter, they're lectin-free, still contain phytic acid or phytates, but they are lectin-free, bit more expensive, and I think slightly less in regards to or they're higher, in regards to the amount of carbs per serving. But I'd probably opt for something like this over peanut butter if you can't remove the peanut butter completely.
Excellent answer, Richard. And MJ said, awesome answer. He's doing all the things that you say, and it's difficult to not eat after training. Elizabeth has done a super chat, by the way, and said the question's in the chat. I am desperately trying to find the actual question. Unless your question is the one that you put, do you see the chat too, or is it pre-recorded? I don't think that's the question you put a super chat towards. So we'll go on to the next one. And when Richard is talking, I will then answer that particular question. We haven't missed you. All right, that's that. Right, so going right back to the next thing. This comes up ever such a lot because it's such a stupid thing that he says. But anyway, Fit Summon. Dr. Cyrus says that insulin is necessary. Correct, it is. And that people who have been on carnivore for 5 to 7 years stop producing it. No, that's not correct. And that can create health problems. If you stop producing it, that would cause a health problem. But if you produce the appropriate amount of insulin, then it's not a problem. Is it necessary to take some carbohydrates? No, it isn't, because they're non-essential. And this is one of his things, because he doesn't understand normative ranges, or he believes the normal ranges and doesn't seem to be able to join up some thinking, which is these ranges that we're looking at are based on people eating 45 to 65% carbohydrates. When you've done 5 to 7 years of being a carnivore, you will have a very low production of insulin, and they will sometimes go out of range because you don't need more insulin. It's really that simple. And I have long-term carnivores, and it doesn't cause problems. The thing is, a lot of people talk about problems. They're looking at normative ranges, not symptoms, not actual deleterious things happening. Most of these people that worry, I always say to them, well, do something like have a chocolate brownie and see what happens. And most people think that their blood glucose will go through the roof. It doesn't do that, because your insulin is so sensitive. In fact, I've seen people with a continual glucose monitor and very low insulin actually see their blood glucose go down eating a chocolate brownie, because the insulin response is so amazing. And it keeps you from those toxic levels. So that's my answer. This insulin insufficiency, I can't remember what he calls it, but it's just ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous, to be honest. Did you want to add, Richard? We got loads of questions, or do you want to move on to the next one?
Yeah, I think you covered it. Look, yeah, 100%. The requirement for it becomes less, so we need less. I've been carnivore for well over a decade, and I'm still doing well. I'm not struggling. I still build
Yeah.
muscle. I still heal and repair. And again, it just comes back to those ranges, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm just going to get rid of that banner down the bottom because it can be a little bit distracting. Go back to the comments then. Here we are, Vitalitis. Good evening. Just watched Professor Ken Sikaris on Low Carb Down Under. Great channel. About a great presentation about cholesterol. Thank you very much. That's good. I've mentioned that just for other people who maybe haven't seen that comment. Right, as I skim through, I'm still trying to find Elizabeth's question. Is another comment from Cami. Hi. I will address this very quickly because I think both Richard and I have had these problems. Sadly, never get notifications from your channel anymore, not from other carnivore channels either. I don't know what YouTube is up to. What YouTube is up to is it's trying to stop carnivore channels doing well. So can you double check if you're a subscriber? Last month was the only month I've ever had a negative number of subscribers. Normally it tells me how many. So every month I might get like 700 new subscribers. Last month it was minus 50. Now I've been doing this a couple of years. That's the first month that's ever happened. Do make sure you're subscribed and then make sure that you get notifications. And if you haven't subscribed and you haven't liked or shared or anything, it really helps the channel. It just tells YouTube you're enjoying it and you like what we're doing. Anyway, that's that. So let's go to the next question. Tom J, it's good to see you in the room, by the way. Oh, here we go. Here's one for Richard, right up his alley. And while that's happening, I will look for Elizabeth's question. Thoughts on MCT oil on a carnivore diet? Worked up to 3 tablespoons a day, and I feel great. A bit sharper than normal. Seems great as a pre-workout also.
Yeah. John, fantastic pick as well. I love that. Yeah, looking sharp there. Who says carnivore isn't good for us, eh? Yeah, look, this is what I've got in there. I've got exogenous ketones and MCT oil in there. And as you guys know, I make MCT oil, MCT powder, and exogenous ketones. I don't mention them very much on the lives because that's not why I'm here. I'm not here to sell product, but they are things that I believe in. MCT oil, which is a medium chain triglyceride. It's a type of fat that is found in many things, in goat's milk and other animal fats, but it's found in low quantities. So what it means is it has a medium amount of carbons within there compared to the longer chain fatty acids and the shorter chain fatty acids. Now, the medium chain fatty acids, they convert into energy a lot quicker. So a longer chain fatty acid, for example, that we consume in animal proteins, will go through the normal digestive process, and then it will be absorbed from the small intestine, bound to chylomicrons, sent to the liver via the lymphatic system, where it will enter beta oxidation or fat storage, and then that is the end product of that fat. If it were ketogenic, it will go on to create ketones, but it's a long, slower process. Now, if we consume C8 MCT, and they're meant to be 3 different types: C8, C10, and C12. C8 being the shortest. C10 I would class as an MCT, a medium chain triglyceride. C12 I wouldn't, although some of the C10 can go through the same process as the longer chain triglycerides, whereas the C8, when we ingest it, it goes into the digestive system and it's sent straight to the liver via the hepatic portal vein, where it will instantly convert into ketones, whether you are ketogenic or not. Now, MCT, as I say, they found naturally in nature. Mine come from coconut. It doesn't mean so the question basically is around the fact that MCT oil comes from coconut and we're carnivore, but we're missing the point. We are taking the MCT oil itself in its finest form with nothing else. So to put it into perspective, my MCT oil, which is the world's highest purity, by the way, 99.9%, you cannot get higher. It doesn't mean that 0.1 contains plant compounds or plant matter. That 0.1 is C10. So it's almost 100% C8, essentially. Now, all of the benefits that we feel, as you say, with adding energy for a pre-workout, cognitive function, helping with inflammation, helping with SIBO, helping with other infections and so on and so forth. All of these benefits that we get from living the lifestyle, we can find and achieve through consuming C8 MCT. So I'm a fantastic advocate of it. This is why I use it. This is why I use it before I come on the live. It supplies this clean, pure energy to my brain that allows me to come on and do these lives for a few hours on a Sunday. And the reason being is that the ketones will breach the blood-brain barrier. So the MCT creates ketones, and the ketones supply energy to the brain. But it's not a stimulant. So it means that you can consume this before bed, and it will help with other things while you sleep, like aid in sleep, for example. It will block inflammation because it blocks NLRP3 inflammasome. So I find that it can help in the evenings to help settle and balance the glutamate to GABA ratio, which helps with glutamate excitotoxicity, which is one of the reasons that we're anxious and stressed, and it allows it to balance this out because it increases the adenosine receptor. And we're probably getting a little bit deep into this, but look, a long story short, I'm a huge fan of MCT. This is why I make it. This is why I use it every day. If you're using it and you feel that it's beneficial, then keep on pushing forward. You know, there are side effects to some people. The oil initially can cause gastro distress, and this is because we're not used to consuming the oil in such a quantity, and the bile reabsorption in the small intestine has been down-regulated, but we can overcome this with time. So initially, for someone new to the ketogenic or carnivore way of living, the powder is preference because it's bound to acacia fiber, and it doesn't have such an impact on the gastric system. When you adapt deeper, and you become carnivore, then the fiber within there can cause issues because now we don't want fiber, and our bodies know that we're carnivore and we don't want fibrous compounds. So then you tend to put the oil in. So when you go back to the oil, but this bile reabsorption has been upregulated because you've been living the lifestyle for so long. So there's a hint and tip there in regards to where you are in your journey. But a huge fan of MCT.
Excellent. So we've now got to Elizabeth's question. Hi, I am 9 years into keto carnivore diet. 9 years, good. Did it dirty. Only last year went plant-free. Last year triggered psoriasis. Any tips to heal it faster? P.S. I'm doing lion plus fish, no coffee, which is a really good thing. I mean, just for people that don't know psoriasis, there are different forms of it, but basically in most people, it's where the skin cells are multiplying faster than normal. And you get these sort of red scaly patches on the skin. You know, carnivore helps because you're eliminating sort of trigger foods, things like, you know, grains, sugar, processed foods, and nightshades tend to go out, you know, tomatoes and peppers. Tomatoes being a really interesting one to get rid of, and gluten, which I know, you know, Richard's going to talk about in a minute. But there's also other things in carnivore that are very good, like the fact it's high in zinc. That can help with skin healing, and you've got vitamin A, you've got vitamin D, and you get adequate protein, which is going to help your skin. So while Richard does the next bit, I'm going to just keep sorting out the questions. We're very busy tonight, but that's my little sort of layman's thing. But Richard, did you want to add anything? Because our good friend Phil Uscott, of course, resolved his psoriasis, which was arthritic, wasn't it, in nature? So yeah, I've got people that reversed it.
Yeah. So look, it's, you know, anything like this tends to come from intestinal permeability, skin conditions, anything to do with autoimmune stuff, especially skin condition. I used to suffer with severe dry skin on my hands. So my hands would crack. I used to suffer with what I believe to be eczema. I don't think it was. It was just a reaction. So generally, when we remove all of the plants, all of these things clear up. Now, a few things can happen in regards to when we go into being a strict carnivore. So doing lion, fantastic. Now, the potential issues with lion, if you're eating beef, could be the ground beef, because ground beef is more likely to contain histamines. It's going to be high in histamines. This can cause a similar response in regards to skin conditions. So that's something to look at. So maybe look at buying the meat that isn't ground, eat fresh, avoid aged meats. Fish in some people can also be problematic, especially if it's not locally sourced. Fish can usually be incredibly beneficial, but for some people it can be problematic. And there are other things within carnivore that can be problematic also. Coffee, which you're not consuming, pork, chicken, they can be problematic. Aged meats and seafood in general can be problematic. So the fish could be the problem. The other thing that could be going on with this is a cortisol issue. So Elizabeth, I don't know if you do extensive exercise or training, but if you damage what's called the HPA axis, so if you are an avid athletic person, if you train a lot and you train for too long, this can cause damage to the HPA axis. We damage the negative feedback loop. And this can affect the production of cortisol. It can lead to an increased production of cortisol for a prolonged period of time. Cortisol controls sebum, which is the substance that's involved in the skin, and that could cause dry skin and skin conditions. So it could be a case that because we've removed all sources of carbohydrate, because we do need carbohydrate, by the way, or let's take that back. We need glucose, but the body makes glucose. And the body makes glucose for us via gluconeogenesis. So it will send lactate into almost a reverse pathway of glycolysis. I think there's like 3 enzymes that are different in this process. Otherwise, if it was the same, the thing would just keep on spinning. So it sends lactate and other substrates into this, and we can create glucose via gluconeogenesis. Now, gluconeogenesis is driven by cortisol, at least for a large proportion. So if we are in a stressed state for a prolonged period of time, maybe to do with excessive training or something stressful that's happened in our life, and we damage this negative feedback loop when cortisol goes into overdrive, it can affect our ability to create glucose efficiently, which can lead to this sebum being affected on the skin. So that can contribute to skin conditions. So look, there's lots of things there to look at. So, we've mentioned the aged meats, the mince meats, the fish potentially, and potentially the cortisol problem. All of these can be contributing factors. There's one other that I've just thought of also. You could be going through an oxalate detox. So oxalates will build up in the tissue and other parts of the body over a prolonged period of time when we're consuming vegetables. When we go stricter carnivore, the body sees this as an opportunity to release oxalate, and it can manifest itself in lots of ways. Skin conditions can be one of those. It can also be aches and pains, and it can be anywhere in the body. But skin conditions is a common side effect of oxalate detox. The way to find this out is to, and I'm not telling you to do this. Obviously, you live in a strict life. So what I would prefer to do is the other things that we've just mentioned. But you could try adding in some dark chocolate or some other compound that contains oxalate for a few days and see if it clears up. If it does clear up, then it's an oxalate problem. But I would be more inclined to address the other things first. So the cortisol issue, look at the aged meats and the ground beef. And I'd potentially remove the fish. The best way to do this is by doing all of those things in the first place and reintroducing. The problem with doing an elimination protocol where we remove one at a time is that more than one of these things can be affecting. So if we remove, say you removed the fish, but you kept in ground beef, for example, well, the fish and the ground beef could be problematic. And what we tend to do when we remove one thing, we consume more of everything else that we can consume. So we could be consuming more of the other compound that could be causing an issue. So the best thing to do with this is to go strict lion with beef and lamb, but not ground beef, fresh meat, fresh from the butcher, grass-fed, grass-finished, and no aged meats, and see if that works. Run that for a little while, and if it does clear up, then you can start introducing these other things, and by that way, you will find which one is the problem. But yeah, a number of contributing factors there potentially.
Yes, I want to thank everyone for joining the live stream. Every single Sunday we do this at 7 p.m. We've got over 200 people watching because we do this out to X and Facebook and Richard's channel and my channel. So if we're not getting to your questions, I do apologize. We try to give you proper answers rather than just go and have a look at this video type answers. I'm just going to show you how you can get more of us. If you really like how we're answering the questions, you can join our school group, which looks like this. So that is sort of the front page. I'll put a link in the chat if you're interested. The reason I say that is because we do a live straight after this at 8 p.m. UK time, which you will see in the calendar. You just click on calendar at the top there, and here's our current live stream in red here, and then at 8 p.m. and then we do one on Monday at 8 p.m. for a whole hour. There's also a classroom, so you get lots of free courses, lots of free ebooks. You know, once you join, you get into all of this. There's a ketogenic course, a carnivore course, thyroid, expertise with an ebook, dairy, all about fruit and veg, all about protein, problem solving. Then when you get to level 8, you get a free book from me. And when you get to level 9, or you want to jump that, you can pay £25 a month to join Fat Club, which is a daily help for 60 days. And all of that can be gleaned and got from joining the school community, which I have put in the live chat. All right. So if you don't get your question answered, don't forget you could join us at 8 p.m. straight after in our members meeting, or tomorrow night at 8 p.m. So I'm going to stop the screen share now, remove that. We'll go back to your questions. So we've got Cruz here, who's very kindly gave a super chat. Thank you very much for that. That helps to get the question moved up. Could high insulin be due to ongoing long-term repair after 1 year, 90% carny? Yes. Don't forget that insulin is anabolic, which means it's a building repair hormone. Also would like to find out your definition of high. As we spoke earlier, the ranges can be interpreted in many different ways. Is it always high? How often do you have blood tests? Is it a fasted blood test? Are you doing a C-peptide test, which is a proxy marker for the production of insulin? Because all of those things help to find out what is your fasted blood glucose looking like. But let's go back to the question. Can it be ongoing long-term repair? It can be, but after a year, you would probably need to look into that a little bit more. Irregular physical activity. Well, the physical activity will put insulin up, which is what you want, as you know, Richard has alluded to just there with mTOR. mTOR doesn't work on its own. We need insulin for growth. Regular nut intake. That possibly wouldn't do that because that is high fat, but it could be inflammatory because it's a plant. Alcohol is very unlikely to do that because most of the metabolism of alcohol is in the liver, but long-term consumption of alcohol does lead to, we hate the expression of insulin resistance. It's more about cell protection, to be honest, but that can actually have an effect because you will get some fatty liver if you've got too much alcohol, and that obviously affects the efficiency of insulin. Did you want to add a little bit, Richard?
Yeah, look, I think you've nailed it. What I would add is that the nut intake, nuts are high in lectins, and lectins combined to insulin receptors, and they'll cause a 5 times higher response with insulin. So nuts could be a big contributor there. But yeah, I agree that the alcohol, as you say, is going to damage the liver, and that could potentially cause problems. So try to make those changes. The nuts, I used to love nuts, but I've removed them, completely. I see no benefit to them any longer for me, and I've noticed so many more benefits since removing them. They're almost these little golden nuggets that we think are, this magic elixir that confers all of these benefits. But even the omega-3s in there, we can't absorb in the form that we need to. So if we consume nuts for omega-3s, then they contain ALA, which we need to convert into EPA and DHA, or DHA in the case of nuts. And it does it so inefficiently, close to zero is converted. So my thing there, as you say, Steve, drop the nuts, drop the alcohol. You don't have to try lion, but I think those are going to be huge contributors to any increased. And as you say, what is high insulin? I think C-peptide, as you say, is going to be a much better proxy to look at.
Yeah, absolutely. C-peptide stays in your blood longer than insulin does. It's all to do with half-life. So it's a very good reading. It's a good proxy measure. Right, Flavor Friends. We're not doctors, by the way. It's all for information purposes only. There's no one-to-one patient-doctor relationship. So whenever we give you information, you can act on it, as in do more research, look it up, or have a bit more knowledge, and then that should help you find the answers you want. So Flavor Friends is saying, I'm doing clean keto stroke carnivore, and my test said I had proteinuria. Is it normal on this diet? Should I be worried? Yeah, well, it is, again, one of those things that it depends on the levels and how often this happens and how are they measuring it. Is it actually looking at protein in the urine? Is it looking at the creatinine to protein ratio? Because obviously that would make a difference. Creatinine is a waste product. When you eat more protein, it can actually mess the figures up. So normal urine will have some protein in. It's normally, I've never seen zero. When I did a decade of blood testing, urine analysis was also part of it, and saliva testing and poop testing. Lovely job. But you could say the range of protein in urine does go from 0 up to about 20 milligrams per deciliter, but up to 150 milligrams per day can be excreted into the urine and actually be sort of normal. Can be exacerbated by things like dehydration, so make sure that you're always hydrated properly, exercise or stress. So you need to look at everything. When you look at your urine, is it clear? Right? If it's clear, then you're drinking too much water. If it's dark, you're not drinking enough. You don't want clear urine, believe it or not. If they keep finding protein in there, normally about 0.3 grams of protein in a 24-hour urine sample. If it's elevated continually, then you do need to get that checked out. But yeah, we'd probably need a bit more information about that. Did you want to say something, Rich, or should we move on?
Yeah, I think you've nailed it. We can go on. We could keep on going on and on, but I think you've nailed. I think you've nailed it. Let's move on.
Yeah. All right. Purely because I had sort of the lab experience of that. Can you discuss, aside from weight gain or loss, how carnivore allows for optimal hormonal functioning and intra-hormonal communication?
Yeah, great question. Well, what creates hormones? What makes hormones? If we look at most of the hormones, they're either protein or fat-based. Where do we get protein and fat? From animal proteins. If we look at what causes damage to most of the hormones in the body, I mean, let's pick one. Let's look at the thyroid, for example. What processes do we require in order to make thyroid? So there's the connection with the hypothalamus, the pituitary, the thyroid stimulating hormone, thyroid peroxidase, and then there's iodine or iodide to iodine via this process, which is iron dependent. Iron, which we cannot get from plants, by the way, because of the porphyrin ring, which isn't found in plants. It's only found in animal proteins. So iron is incredibly important. We need the iodine, which we can get in high quantities from animal proteins. And during this process, the tyrosine is bound to the thyroglobulin, which creates the T4. And then we need selenium to remove one iodine atom to create the T3. Again, the selenium found in high quantities in animal proteins. Now, if we eat the animal proteins, the system, everything it needs, all of the ingredients, the proteins, the fats, iron, and so on and so forth is found within the animal proteins. So what happens if we decide to try to get this from plant compounds? Well, what if we eat things that are high in beta carotene, not vitamin A, because vitamin A does not exist in plants. Well, beta carotene isn't true vitamin A, and true vitamin A is retinol. So we need to convert that into the active form. And one of the ingredients or cofactors involved in this process is T4. So if we use this T4 to convert the beta carotene into retinol, we reduce the T4, therefore leaving less T4 to be available for conversion into T3. So now we've got a problem. Now we've got thyroid problems. If we are lucky enough to convert any of this into retinol, what is left is used to convert the T4 into T3. So now we're left with issues with things like retinol or vitamin A deficiency elsewhere in the body. So that's just one thing. If we're also eating plants, things like kale, our brassica vegetables, what's the one I'm thinking of, Steve? Broccoli, superfood allegedly. Well, broccoli contains a compound called isothiocyanate, which is created during the chewing process. So when we chew on broccoli, myrosinase binds to glucoraphanin and it creates a compound called sulforaphane. Well, sulforaphane will compete for iodine at the thyroid, preventing iodine and its availability to be converted into T4. So by default, every time we consume the plant compounds, they contain these anti-nutrients that are preventing the body from producing hormones and so on and so forth. And it's a similar story regardless of whatever else we look at. So again, what are the main factors? Proteins and fats, which are found in the animal proteins. Whenever we put these other compounds in, that hinders the body's ability to create these compounds. Everything that we need, not just to survive, but thrive, are found in animal proteins. Nature provides us with this perfectly packaged present that allows us to create all of these fantastic hormones. And look, we could go on. We could go on with testosterone and the zinc blocking the ability of testosterone production and so on. But there are just some examples. So it's a similar sort of story in regards to whatever else we look at within the body from a hormonal perspective. But there are just two examples for you.
Yeah, and I mean, carnivore, and if you want to get into fat as well, you can look up quorum sensing, which is not a canonical sort of method of talking to each other like hormones, but it's a little bit more sort of granular, and you could look that up actually. And that is where bacteria populations talk to each other and they signal to each other. And what happens is it can promote an infection. That's how that works. So bacteria talks to each other. Now, one of the things that mediates that and actually stops that happening is LDL, or the ApoB protein, which allegedly is really bad, by the way. That's the latest thing, isn't it? To try and make LDL sound really bad. They talk about levels of ApoB. And this has been studied. This has been shown in hospital settings, clinical settings, that at this level of sensing, which is, like I say, much more nuanced and not really that well studied, they've shown that you have less infection when you have higher levels of ApoB. So, yeah, that's a little rabbit hole to send you down for a little bit. Right, this one is for Richard, I would imagine. Jonesy Lad 142. Hi, going to do a 24-hour fast with Keto Pro electrolytes and MCT oil. Any tips on how to structure this? Cheers.
24 fast Keto Pro electrolytes, MCT oil. Perfect, fantastic. Look, so the electrolytes will not break a fast. MCT oil will not break a fast. The Keto Pro products that I manufacture, other than the protein, will not break a fast. BHB, MCT, and electrolytes, in fact, I would recommend for fasting. So in regards to structure, you can consume the electrolytes as and when you want. And in fact, I think they're an integral part of a fast, particularly for me. The MCT oil, the C8, again, as we mentioned earlier, this is going to instantly convert into ketones, and this is going to further enhance your state of autophagy and your benefit in regards to fasting. So the way I'd structure, I just consume the electrolytes as and when required throughout the day. The MCT, I would consume in the first half of the day, and then I would let the body ramp up its own production to a more higher extent, if you like, in the evening. So for me, I would consume the MCT first thing in the morning, again a few hours after, maybe again a few hours after that. Like, you don't need the MCT for fasting, but it does enhance that fasted state because it will elicit all of the responses of living a ketogenic lifestyle and be in that state of autophagy, which is things like autophagy, mitophagy, brown fat activation, improved insulin sensitivity, and so on and so forth. It's all of the benefits that we attribute to fasting we can achieve without fasting, by the way. And our requirement, if we're ketogenic or carnivore, for fasting becomes a lot less. Fasting is more beneficial for people who are not ketogenic or carnivore in regards to a percentage, although I would deem that to be dangerous if they're not ketogenic or carnivore because of the way that they will break their fast, which is usually as a celebratory sort of meal. At the end of their fast, they'll consume a high bolus of protein, which can be incredibly dangerous. So we don't want to break our fast with carbohydrates at all. We want to break it with predominantly fat and a little bit of protein. So a super fatty cut of meat, even some some cheese or cream, even, or some form of fat, but with a little bit of protein. But preference the fat when you break a fast. Personally, when I used to fast, which I don't actively do anymore. So if someone were to ask me, do I fast? I don't actively fast, but I intuitively fast. So I eat when I'm hungry. If I'm not hungry, I don't eat. It just so happens that I spend the vast majority of the day not eating because I'm not hungry. But when I eat, it's always something nice and fatty. Some chuck steak, for example, which is incredibly fatty, but super easy. Don't overthink it. Just don't break the fast with carbohydrates. Don't think that you've gained the right to this treat because putting in a high bolus of carbohydrate will be highly problematic when you break a fast because you are so insulin sensitive.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay. So we've got to Glenda. Glenda, you did a super chat. Never done one before. Money went. Here it is. We saw your super chat. I have had 2 failed colonoscopies due to not emptying despite a lot of meds. Got a CT scan Tuesday, so only had chicken now. 4 days fasting. Any advice? I think the fasting is really great. That's a good idea. Clear liquids are very good because hydration status is good. You could also look at broth. Broth is okay as well, but a clear liquid tends to be better. Interestingly enough, if you look at mainstream advice, and this is quite telling, isn't it? The mainstream will say go as low fiber as possible for 4 days beforehand. I thought fiber was great for your colon. I wonder why they say that. So yes, your 4-day fast will probably help. Just make sure hydration is really on point. I would definitely say that, you're doing all the right things, because if you're on a 4-day fast, you're not going to have any residual matter in your colon, especially if you're carnivore. Especially, I wouldn't have any fruit or veg or any of that sort of stuff. Certainly wouldn't have any fiber. And actually, the fasting is going to improve the cleansing, but I really can't stress enough how important the hydration will be at this point, and also maybe some electrolytes. What do you think, Richard?
Yeah, completely agree. I think, if you are looking to clear liquids, the MCT is fantastic, also in the form of C8. And again, you're still technically in that fasted state, but it's just going to supply you with that ketone energy. But it will also lubricate the system and passageways also. But yeah, bone broth, I think, is incredibly beneficial also. But I think you've nailed it.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think the super chats are really good. So I'm sorry we didn't get to you straight away, but sometimes when there's a super chat and the question shows up somewhere else, it's a bit confusing. Right. Okay. I can't pronounce this name. I think it's Venelin, which sounds like a medication to me, but oh no, that's Benelin. That's what I'm thinking. Right. Venelin, lovely name, actually. Do you guys know if Carnivore can help removing eye floaters? Yes, because it did for me. Got them 2 months ago, checked by my doctor. They just said, get used to them. Now that's great, isn't it? Well, maybe because in their sphere, they don't see people unless they're, eating standard American diet, or they're vegans or vegetarians, so they don't meet carnivores. So I've definitely seen people comment, and I've had success stories where people said their eye floaters have gone on carnivore. Some people have had sort of therapeutic fasting, and they've seen the floaters gone. Trying to make, I can't see any floaters in my eyes right now. So that's my personal experience. Richard?
Yeah, I've got nothing to add to that. I mean, it's going carnivore seems to help improve almost everything that anybody's ever come to see me with. So I can't see it being any different with eye floaters. But I was more I was more laughing about the doctor saying just get used to it. And that seems to be their attitude, isn't it? Unless they can offer you a medication, it's tough,
That's all they care about, really, isn't it?
Crazy stuff.
Mainstream diet recommendations and just get on with it. Right, Helen saying, good evening, gentlemen. I am on day 72 and suffering with occasional bile reflux. I think it's from eating hot minced beef, 75-25. Could it be the warm rendered fat causing the sour bile reflux? Yes. For people that don't know what we mean by rendered fat, when you cook ground beef, that liquid that's hot that many people tip back on, don't do it, especially if you're new to carnivore, because it's a little bit difficult to digest until you're fully fat adapted. But I would say it's that. Helen, hot stuff. I like the name.
Yeah, spot on.
Richard?
And yeah, there could also be a histamine response. Again, as we mentioned earlier, ground beef or minced beef, it tends to cause issues within the gut because it will increase mast cell activation, which will release histamines. Histamines will create acid reflux. So it could be to do with the rendered fat and the aged meats. Try it cold or try draining the fat. That's what I tend to do. I no longer pour the fat over any longer. I just cook my mince in its own juices, but I remove the fat per se. So you could try that first, but if that does persist, then just come away from the ground beef or the minced beef, and see how you get on. But yeah, it's incredibly common in regards to acid reflux on a carnivore lifestyle. And there are other contributors as well. Chicken and pork can be also problematic because of the lectins that they consume within their diet.
Yeah. Just to remind people, I'll put another link into the chat to our school community because at 8 p.m. we're going to be over there. And we have another super chat question from BB. Hi, Rich. Does MCT powder break a fast as I take it with electrolytes first thing in the morning? Thanks.
No, not at all. It will further increase the benefits of a fasted state. And again, just to reiterate, the MCT, the one that I make, at least the C8, it's sent straight to the liver via the hepatic portal vein. So it doesn't go through the long, laborious digestive process that the longer chain fatty acids that we consume from animal proteins will do. Because it does this, it doesn't activate the digestive system and it does not break a fast, because it's the activation of mTOR that will break a fast. We look at calories. It's not so much the caloric value, it's the activation of mTOR that comes along with that mTOR activation, or the bolus of protein, for example, that we've consumed that will elicit that mTOR response, and that is ultimately what will break a fast. So the MCT will be sent straight to the liver via the hepatic portal vein, and it will increase the production of ketones, which will further enhance a fasted state. So these are things that I use when I used to fast. As I say earlier, I don't actively fast anymore, but I will come into the office in the morning and I'll consume MCT with some MCT oil, or as I've got in there now, the BHB with some MCT, but perfectly fine to take when fasting.
Great. And thank you, Glenda, for follow-up super chat. It was really nice of you. That's great. And if you look carefully in the chat, by the way, our chat is really good. It's full of great people. Andrew Scarborough, maybe investigate a capsule endoscopy if it's appropriate. It's a camera pill you swallow at home that goes through the whole digestive tract with 360-degree high-definition images. And he had it in 2012. Ah, it's cutting edge, this boy. Cutting edge. So, yeah, we got 3 minutes. So let's go back to the last question we might be able to squeeze in. James, it's a two-parter. Clarification on the mTOR activation. Confirming that protein is necessary for mTOR activation. Fat alone will not do it. Is that correct?
Yes. Protein, you can activate mTOR via training also. So the protein isn't necessary in that respect. And carbohydrate can activate mTOR, but again, via a different pathway. So training and protein will activate mTOR directly, but carbohydrate will activate it via IGF-1. So it's a different process, but fat will not elicit an mTOR response.
No, and that sort of brings us to the end here. I'm just screenshotting some of the questions. If you've missed out, we haven't got to it, I do apologize. Like I say, we're running this on 4 different platforms, and the best way to get your question answered is either turn up early once the live stream at 7 p.m. is advertised on YouTube and put your question in the comments or the live chat, which will get you there. You can do that even, the day before, or when it goes live, you can do a super chat, which helps us, supports the channel and moves it up a number. Anyway, I want to thank you. If you're not coming over to our school group, we will see you next Sunday, which is free. And we're here every Sunday for a whole hour. Hope you've enjoyed that. If you join us on school, you'll see other members there who love seeing us for half an hour on a Sunday. We call it extra time. And we also do a whole hour on Monday at 8 p.m. So you get a lot from the membership plus all the courses. So everybody on YouTube, X, Facebook, Richard's group, my channel, whatever, Thank you so much. Do make sure you subscribe. Make sure you click the notification bell.
Fantastic. Steve, really quickly, just before we go also, I'd just like to just reiterate what you said in regards to the full frank answers. We'd love to get through them all, but we do love to give detailed answers. But what we do, if you follow us over to school, where Stephen quite often screenshots many of the comments or the questions that are still left. And if you are on the live within the school group, we can get into these either tonight, over the next 30 minutes, or tomorrow through the full hour. So hopefully we'll see you there.
Yeah, I am screenshotting furiously before we go. So loads of questions. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.